So going back to DJing slash production, yeah, you know, I might be wrong, but whenever I speak to people, I like to think in everything that all of us do is like we've got an end goal, like where we wanna get, etc. etc. Like, what is like like what is your end goal if you've got like what would you like to really 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 accomplish in terms of like production and DJing?
Good question. I think I mean, everyone dreams of being like a superstar DJ. I think even people who are not DJs and producers dream of it. But
Yes.
I don't think that's a realistic goal. I think for me, the reality of music and production, having done it for a few years now, is that I just like to get to a point where I have the time and the space to create music more regularly than I am probably at the moment. So that just means being a bit more disciplined with myself
Yeah.
in terms of the time I'm investing in it in order to get the outputs that I want in terms of quality. I think my sort of that I get that point, I guess, would be a more short term goal. I think in the medium term that if I work on my discipline a bit more, having like a more steady release schedule where I'm like releasing music on like either a monthly or quarterly basis, but like when it is released, it's really a collation of output. So not just drip feeding like a track here, track there, but actually releasing a sort of a body of work. So an
Yeah.
EP or an LP every so often. I think that's quite a big change that in terms of like my approach in terms of production now is like trying to think more from a kind of sound palette kind of point of view when I'm starting projects, thinking about what the sound is that I'm trying to create, getting those kinds of sounds together, and then creating a few tracks out of that sound palette.
Yeah.
Whereas I think before I was a bit more, when I started definitely, I was a bit more like, a bit more sporadic. It was just like searching through sample packs, trying out different presets, trying out different audio effects, MIDI effects, and just like, magic would happen, but like, I think the sounds of each track were quite varied. And I think as an artist, you need to be known for like most people are known for one particular
One
sound.
particular thing that people
So,
go to, innit? Yeah.
you focus on that, you focus on those sounds, you focus on those kinds of, I guess, like signature sounds within that genre, the types of like rhythms that you find in that genre as well. And it's the same as well, like in terms of like the kind of effects that you tend to find that are used in that genre in terms of productions. So I think that's kind of like my medium term goal, more regular output, and then longer term goal is to get better gigs, be playing not just in London, trying to get gigs outside of London across the UK. And yeah, just growing as an artist and building my reputation up over time. Yeah, so I think that probably answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm a music consumer, and I consume music. Obviously, I love different DJs like you, producers who are able to provide us consumers with so many different sounds and experiences. Like, what are your thoughts on UK music overall?
I mean,
The state of the state of the UK music overall. It could be like in different genres, etc., etc. What are your thoughts of it right now?
I mean, the music scene is an ever evolving beast, I guess. I think the way that it is done now, everyone's seen in the media about like nightclubs shutting down left, right, and center. They're getting outed by big sort of events companies, giant venues, and there's this trend of people don't want to go out every weekend, right? They want to go out maybe once a month or whatever, but when they are going out, they want a performance, they want to experience a show. And I think that's great, don't get me wrong, I love those kinds of things as well, but I think from a grassroots sort of and the sort of opportunities for up and coming artists, they're getting less and less, I guess, in that way as a result of that.
Yeah.
Not to say there aren't like loads of up and coming sort of grassroots events, but you just have it's I guess it's more challenging for up and coming artists, but then it's also from the event organizer's point of view, like you're competing with these big events where people are spending anything from, I don't know, let's say 50 quid, let's say on average for like a big event. And it means like people are saving their money for that rather than, I guess, going to these more intimate sort of venues and grassroots events. And, you know, I think you need to have those grassroots events. They're so important because, you know, without that, you know, it doesn't give, you know, DJs, producers an opportunity to build their experience, their confidence behind the decks, you know, their ability to sort of like read and connect with the crowd. Because, you know, you don't just jump from nothing to suddenly playing on a massive stage in front of 5,000 people. There is a journey and building and layering of confidence that happens over time. So, you know, I think the moral of that story is I'm like slightly concerned, I guess, about the way the music scene is. At least this is the way I find it in London.
Yeah.
But saying that, you know, there are events, there's open decks happening all the time. And I guess the moral of the story is if you are like an up and coming artist, just take the plunge, just go to these events, sign up, get on the decks for half an hour, however long the spots are at these open decks. Do guest mixes on friends' shows, you know, support your friends who are DJing as well. Buy the tickets to the shows that they're playing at, and you know, that gives them the motivation to keep going, you know. And you know, it's a journey, but yeah, the nightlife scene in London is it's a beautiful and a complex, but you know, it's a tough thing to navigate, but the key thing is just like keep getting yourself out there however you can.
Yeah. I've got this theory. I'm interested to know, obviously, to get your thoughts on this theory. Yeah, I've got this theory that, obviously, you know, over the last few years, because obviously social media, so many creatives, so many more music artists have came out, so many more DJs, so many actors. It seemed like in every industry, more people have came out because of social media, and obviously people have got these gadgets, and people are trying to expose their talents as well, right?
Of course.
I've got this. My theory is it's not. Obviously, some people like to say it's saturated. You know, this word of it's saturated. There's too many of these people. But I feel like for me the issue is not because the market is saturated. For me the issue is not enough people are being unique enough. Not many people are being creative enough in terms of like creating their own lane. You know, so that the people can see them for who they are. I feel like so many people are just, you know, more people are being basically they're copying rather than, like I said, being unique and being more creative. What are your thoughts on that in terms of just that vibe in general? People being, do you feel like more people are more creative and the market is more saturated, or you feel like we need more DJs that are more unique, we need more artists, basically more unique people that are just more creative basically overall? Because I love unique people, you know what I mean? What are your thoughts on that?
I would say that definitely the market is saturated. Like most people, like everyone has a friend who DJs now. Like my grandma can do. You know, it's tough to break through just as a DJ in this field, I guess. And not to say I have some friends who are just pure DJs and they're doing very well. But I'd say on the whole, if you want to get your name out there, you really do have to be producing. On the other point you made about, you know, not being creative enough or people copying other people. My stance on that is, you know, there's lots of different genres out there. And I think, you know, when you are starting out, it's absolutely fine to like be inspired by tracks within the genre that you're focusing on and take inspiration from, you know, whether it's like thinking about the sound palette in those tracks or thinking about the rhythms or looking at the arrangements or how that producer sort of builds tension within tracks and releases that tension during sort of breakdowns and stuff. There's nothing wrong with that, and I think that's the way you have to start when you're producing, to be honest. And you know, I think over time, once you have like done that for a number of years, you know, eventually you start finding like your own sound signature within that. But that takes time. And you know, you have to have regular sort of steady release schedule, and there's like, you know, there'll be like certain elements that you use in every single track, whether it's like lead synth sounds or like certain drums sort of sounds that you use in your drum programming. And you know, I think it's a combination of those sort of repeated motifs and elements that lead you to be like, in your own words, like finding your own channel and your own sort of unique
ID,
your own ID within
Yeah.
this sort of very saturated market. I mean, that's something that I'm still aspiring to, and like I still feel like after two years of doing this, like I still like feel like I'm at the very early stages of the process. You know, I have like so many like tools that I want to buy. I want to buy like various like hardware sort of elements to sort of complement the music production sort of workflow that I have. And you know, you just have to build up the tools of your trade over time and just trial and error things out. Some things will become like instrumental in your workflow. Other things will be used to solve specific problems that you might be having during your workflow. But ultimately, you just got to try stuff out, and it's not. And there's so much free stuff out there as well. Like there's so many people putting out sample packs. There's so many people putting out sort of templates, and you know, getting you to trying to get you into their funnel, I guess, from a sort of marketing sales perspective. But you know, it doesn't have to be super expensive, and there's some great free stuff out there. So you know, just try them out, and you'll find that over time there are similarities between the different sort of tools that are available, and just getting yourself used to I guess the UX, I suppose, that you know synths have, and just knowing what each sort of I guess knob on the synth does, and like you know what each fader does, and like how the sound kind of guess moves through the sort of tool that you're using in order to get the output you want.
Yeah.
But yeah, just give it a go, guys. It's so much fun, and if you love it, you know it's there's an infinite amount of stuff out there. So just get involved, and you know, not just the online stuff. You know, also like read book. There's loads of really great books out there as well, and you know, try and go to face-to-face workshops, and you know, learn from others. I think is the biggest thing you can do. There's a wealth of information out online, but a lot of the time they're trying to sell you something. Whereas like the best thing you can do is really get like one-on-one time with someone who's been doing it a bit longer than you have. And also just collaborating with people. Yeah. Like you'll have friends, if you're into music, you'll have other friends who are kind of in a similar stage that you are in your journey. And, you know, collaboration is great because you teach each other things. Like I have a friend of mine, Will Lockyer, you know, and he's been producing for like 10 plus years. And, you know, even when we get together in the studio, like there's still things that I'll be teaching him in Ableton that he wasn't aware of before, you know, and it's one of those kind of things like you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So, you know, until someone shows you, you're like, oh my God, that was so amazing, like so simple, but wow, it had like such a great dramatic effect on like how I created that sound or got to the sound that I wanted. So yeah, learn, absorb, and collaborate would be my 3 key takeaways, I guess.
Yeah. So do you honestly feel like you've got a very, very long way to go in terms of like, you know, like maybe this might be the wrong or right word, mastering like your craft, like, you know, your DJing craft or like your production craft. Do you feel like you've got a long way to go, or you feel like, nah, you're quite good at it and you can only get better, if you get what I'm trying to say, or you feel like you've got a long way to go?
I mean, I always think that I've got a long way to go. I mean, it's, you know, every track you make, you get better, you get a bit faster, you get more confident using the tools that you have at your disposal at that time. And, you know, I have definitely, looking back on what I was like 2 years ago, yeah, absolutely, like I've improved dramatically. Yeah. You know, I have like a workflow for how I make tracks. I have like go-to things for doing various things as part of the production process. But there's just so much amazing stuff out there, and you know, you just gotta, you know, it never ends. I think music is one of those things that really suits people who have this kind of like always on kind of learning approach in terms of like it's really very much like a mindset thing. You know, there's of course, like you get some producers who've been doing it for so long, and the reason their sound is so good is because they've really become masters at the tools they have at their disposal. And it's almost like, I think they get better at doing the simple things really well. I think one of the pitfalls that a lot of producers have, and usually is like a big barrier to even starting in the first place, like people feel like there's so much to learn, like I'm not going to bother at all kind of thing, or like, but you and I think when you start producing, you think the way to get an effective sound is by like having way too many channels on your project, and as a result of that, the sound sounds really muddy. The things that you want to really shine in your production are just like lost in the mix, basically. And I think what the experts, the pros, are really good at is like doing less and really enhancing each of the fewer sounds better. And that's something that I'm kind of trying to strive for, is like simplicity in my workflow, and doing the smaller stuff and the simpler things really well is like definitely a goal for me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Earlier, you said when you was talking about something. Yeah. Earlier, you said something that stuck up to me. You said something along the lines, and you mentioned discipline.
Mm-hmm.
You said something about I think you need to be a bit more disciplined in terms of like, I think putting out a bit more songs or something like that. Earlier, what you said. Can we touch? That was a little bit interesting because obviously, like, as well. Once again, all of these things that we do, like discipline is like the key in terms of like moving forward, evolving, and making sure we get whatever we need to get done, right? Like, could we talk about discipline just a little bit more? Like, would you say that overall, like, you, in terms of like your life, things that you try to do in your personal life, like, would you say like you're a disciplined person, or in some aspects you could do with a little bit more discipline?
I would say that I am a pretty disciplined person. The discipline is really important because you just have to put in the hours, and you just got to schedule time in your week where you are going to be producing. And I think some people, it's also about knowing yourself. Like, some people are better working in the morning, some people are late night people where at night there's less distractions and they can just kind of crack on with things. I would say on the whole, I wish that I was a morning person, because I think like if you produce in the morning, that's probably when your mind is less
Cloudy.
less cloudier. There's less having the clarity of just having slept for 8 hours and so forth, and your mind not being bogged down with all the things that have been going on throughout your working day. So yeah, I think the discipline thing definitely works in just understanding yourself. I think I am pretty disciplined in terms of how I sort of split out my week, because like most people, I have a normal job Monday to Friday. I work in healthcare advertising, and I have to wake up when I'm going into the office at like 6:15, and then I'm working till about between 5-6 o'clock. Let's say I leave the office, and then I'm usually going into CrossFit after that. So by the time I get home after CrossFit, it's probably like 8 o'clock, and like I find it really hard when I'm exhausted to have really good creative output. So for me, the way I get around that is that I schedule time at the weekends. So for me, the way it is currently, as long as I'm getting in like one solid like 4 to 6 hour session on the weekend, that like is enough for me at the moment. Like when I am deep in a project, of course, like it's not just the one. Like I'll have an idea, and then when I go to bed, like an idea or solution will come in, like a melodic line or something. The solution will come to me overnight, and then I'll go straight back into the project in the morning, and you get you get fully invested, and you just dive straight in with it. You become basically quite obsessive with the track you're working on. So you're like that sort of, it's a cycle.
Exactly,
that kind of the more you put into it, the more excited you get about the track, the more the track's sounding closer to being where you want it to being finished, and then the excitement continues to build, and then it's so you can have days where you'll just spend like several days in a row working on a track or whatever. But yeah, everyone's different, and like coming back to what I was saying before, it's just about like knowing yourself, knowing how you work, being able to knowing how much free time you have outside of like the things you have to do, and then just sort of divvying it up accordingly. I think as well, like the people that I know who tend to be the best at it, like they definitely reduce the amount that they go out. I think is a big thing. Everyone has work during the week, and they want to sort of get out and party and blow off some steam, and like that's just the human condition. But I think in order to really utilize the time you have when you're producing to the best of its to the best it can be, you have to have a clear mind. You can't be hungover. You can't you can't be getting on Ableton after. I mean, some people can, I guess, but can't be going on Ableton or whatever DAW you use after 3-4 hours sleep. You need to be fully rested, at peace. Like your mind, your mental health is good. For me, the best music comes most of the time after I've done like a class or after I've been cycling, because the sort of, I guess, just once you've hit the mind and body, that the body aspect of our health, then it allows the mind to channel itself and create the best creative output. So I mean, that's what works for me, but you'll just have to find out what works for you, people listening out there. So
yeah,